Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tarot and Attachment. My name is Erin Smith. I'm a professional tarot reader and an associate marriage and family therapist. And I do a weekly reading usually, but I have been traveling since it is the holiday, and actually today is Christmas Eve. So I had a moment and I thought I would take this time to ask the cards what might be most helpful for us to know, understand, or do in order to make the most of this holiday. And so I'm going to do just that. I'm going to shuffle the cards. I'm going to concentrate while I shuffle, and I will be with you momentarily. I'm just going to say a prayer over these cards. Hmm. So, it's such an interesting set of images and the message coming through them, especially at a time where people are gathering together. And so it's both a time, obviously, of celebrating our connections to others, specifically people whom we call family, whether that is your family of origin or your chosen family. And that said, that doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. Certainly family invokes certain painful memories, certain um, unhealthy dynamics that color the lives of each person. So, really, what the message here is that right speech is a central part of not only feeling inspired in the world and taking right action, but finding love, compassion, and connection with people. It comes through the way that we choose to communicate. And that's really being highlighted here. Here we have the King of Swords. So, swords are the suit of thoughts and ideas and communication. And kings represent a kind of mastery, a mastery over our words, the way that we conceptualize something and the way that we choose to communicate it. And a sword is a very interesting archetypal image here. It is largely, most people think of a sword as being associated with being a weapon, right? And it is easy to imagine how one might weaponize their words. It's sort of like if you have an idea that you've been wronged, and you may then, in your interactions with others, interpret even a slight slip of the tongue as being an assault on your character. And so the King of Swords is asking us to really consider carefully not only what we're saying, but how we're perceiving things. And we want to do this from a really mature place. And this is like asking us to be able to hold complexity, right? So again, let's say you grew up in a household where you were often criticized and words were painful, and you developed a sense of yourself out of this constant criticism. It may be then that you are very sensitive to anything that even remotely sounds like a critical analysis of your behavior. But if you are holding that in awareness, if you are in touch with your own history and how that has affected you, and that you are aware of this bias that you might have to interpret things in this certain way, like in, our psychological training, we often call this countertransference. It's like where our client's material brushes up against our own wounding, and we feel that internally as they're speaking, or we're just even feeling kind of a somatic resonance with whatever the client is being described. This happens actually in all human relationships. And it is often that our most unresolved wounds get triggered when we're hearing somebody else speak about things that are tonally similar. So, the more awareness we can have about our own histories and how we've been affected by experiences in our lives and how that has affected our self-conception, the more we are able to choose wisely to employ this pause before we react to a situation, so that we can really consider what other alternatives there might be to this reactionary assumption that somebody is being critical. Like maybe they're hungry, maybe they needed to eat a sandwich, maybe they didn't get much sleep last night. Maybe they are also not choosing their words carefully and have some other intention that is underlying the way that they're communicating. Again, it's this ability to hold complexity. And then from this place of pause, from wise consideration, then we choose our words and how we're going to communicate with others. Kings represent mastery and maturity. They are, you don't get to be a king overnight. You have to have much training and much life experience to assume this position of authority. And so there's this idea that when we are like kings in our communication and our thoughts, then we don't use our thoughts and words on ourselves or others like a weapon. We do not weaponize our communication. We choose wisely. Even if we have to communicate something difficult, we keep in mind how that message might land with the other, and we frame it in such a way that we are bound to get the best possible interaction. So this is central to what spirit or the cards are asking us to consider as we gather together with our loved ones or even those who we have a difficult history with. And if we can be mindful, so in order to be mindful in the moment of the way we're communicating, we also, again, have to have a map of our own minds. In psychological terms, we call this metacognition or thinking about thinking. Again, understanding why we hold certain biases when we do. And strength is about taming the beast within. It's mastering your mind so that your mind doesn't master you. And I believe this guy has been coming up in readings. Like this is sort of a message that has been carried over through the several months, that we are being asked to meditate on our conception of the world and not be overly reactionary. So, in order to tame the beast within, the beast is the one who wants to lash out, wants to defend itself. It's that automatic defense response when we feel like we're being attacked, or even that we're just worried or concerned, and we're analyzing the data that we're taking in, and we're painting a very negative picture in order to try to circumvent some catastrophic event. It's just watching our own minds, really watching the narratives that arise under certain conditions, noticing how it feels in our own body when these narratives come up, and distancing ourselves enough from them, really understanding that we are not our thoughts, that this is actually activity that's happening in mental talk space. And when I am not overly identified with my thoughts, when I am identifying as the witness, the one who is witnessing my thoughts, the one that is experiencing this emotional sensation that occurs in the body in conjunction with thinking, when I'm noticing these senses and what they might be telling me about an experience I'm having, again, this is the pause that I'm speaking about, that allows us then to be skillful and wise in the way that we communicate in the moment. And ultimately, what I have learned from my wise teachers is that the best way for me to gain this perspective, to practice this discernment, is through meditation, and specifically a meditation technique that I was taught by my teacher, Michael Taft, who was teaching this method that developed by Shinzen Young, which is really about utilizing the, activity and sense space as the object of meditation, and continuing to bring one's attention back to this. So if it's mental talk, then you're just, rather than getting caught up in the content of it, you're just noticing the languaging, noticing oh, when I'm thinking about this, then there are certain images that arise in my mind's eye. Oh, and that's causing me to have a certain kind of emotional reaction. And it's just noticing how these sense spaces relate to one another, that there's a certain feeling of overlap, even though they are distinct and separate. And again, just this ability to watch how I am experiencing the world of my mind. It gives me that distance that I need to say to myself, do I know that that's true? And is it helpful for me to believe it? Because oftentimes what we do is we work ourselves up into a frenzy. We imagine worst case scenarios, and then we're already on edge. We're already at the edge of our ability to wisely navigate certain situations. But if I'm watching, if I'm witnessing, if I'm noticing, if I'm in the process of thinking about thinking, then I am not so likely to get captured by that content. And then I can choose my actions more wisely, right? I can choose to take actions that are life affirming, that are inspiring, that feed the life force energy of the room, that invigorate conversations, and meeting people at the edge of their interests and passions, and being able to share in the things that make us feel most alive. And that, of course, is what wand energy represents. Wands are fiery. They represent our interests, the inspiration that we draw to take certain actions out in the world, and that very much represents Knight. Knights are questers. And they are seeking to fulfill a goal, and they will not stop until they've achieved that goal. They're tenacious and true. And so again, it's like if we can be masterful with our thoughts and understand where thoughts arise from and not get too overly identified with them, then we can take wise action out in the world out of a sense of invigoration and inspiration. And always, of course, at the crux of this is having a kind and loving heart, which is really what is being represented by the Page of Cups. How innocent and vulnerable can we be in the way that we love ourselves and others? How can we choose to share ourselves, our most authentic emotional selves with others in such a way that feels safe, where we don't have to be guarded and, protect ourselves or distance ourselves, that there's this kind of loving, innocent quality to the Page of Cups. Pages are childlike, and this sort of sweet, distilled, archetypal, childlike quality, this um, expression of interest and wonder in the world around you. Children are still young to the world. They haven't had their hearts broken in the same way that we have as adults. And so they're just a lot more likely to show up in situations and just be themselves and um, share of their hearts. And, obviously, it's not always safe to do that. We, again, have to practice discernment. Hopefully, if we are being mindful and paying attention and listening to our experience without getting too caught up in old narratives, that if indeed it's not a safe place or person to share your authentic self with, that you'll be able to remove yourself from that situation. But in environments where we are with those who love us, who have a certain amount of understanding of our humanness, then we are invited to be open-hearted in this way, to explore our relational connections from this place of kind of innocence and wonder. And sometimes that requires taking a leap of faith, right? Again, it's sort of like we all have histories, and not all of those histories are equal. And when we've had our hearts broken or when we've been betrayed, it can sometimes feel like a great risk to trust again, to show up in an open-hearted way, to love, right? Even love can be a risk if you've been deeply disappointed in your past experiences. But in fact, we are being called to take this leap of faith, to risk our hearts in order to gain the benefit of that kind of love and connection that all human beings need. And so the Fool is asking us to trust the process, trust that the universe is divinely guiding us through these different trials and tribulations. And that when we give ourselves over to them, that there is something beneficial, that there is something that we can gain in the way of going through a process, of giving ourselves over to a situation. And again, still coming from this place of being mindful and present. So I don't know. I hope that that's helpful for anybody out there who is might be struggling, or even just giving you a sense of like how to enjoy your circumstances even more deeply. But any way that you are experiencing this holiday season, I am sending all of my love and blessings to you out in the world, and have a good holiday season. Take care.